Kelsey Mitchell is staying with the Fever after agreeing to a new contract.
A massive contract.
She didn't whisper it. She didn't slide it into a post-game interview, hoping nobody would notice. Caitlin Clark looked straight into the camera on national television and said exactly what she meant. Championship or nothing. No hedging, no diplomacy, no careful PR language designed to manage expectations. Just a line drawn in the sand for the entire league to see. And the moment those words landed, Indiana's front office stopped building and started hunting. Kelly Krauskopf, Amber Cox, and Stephanie White didn't respond with a press conference. They responded with a roster overhaul so fast and so calculated that the rest of the league barely had time to process what was happening. 4 signings. Day 1. Every weakness targeted. Every gap filled with surgical precision. And now the question hanging over every other franchise in this league is simple and uncomfortable. Did you just realize Indiana is already ahead of you? Before we get into this breakdown, if you're locked in on real WNBA analysis and not just surface headlines, you're in the right place. This is Hook Reports, where we don't just repeat the news, we break down what it actually means. So before we start, I want to hear from you. Do you believe the Indiana Fever are true championship contenders right now, or are we getting ahead of ourselves? Drop your take in the comments because I read them all. And if you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're covering every major move, every roster shift, and every storyline that could change the league this season. Now, let's talk about what just happened in Indiana.
Miss there from Lloyd. Clark, the fling ahead. Oh, what a dime! And Mitchell lays it in!
Before any new face walked through the door, Indiana had one conversation that mattered more than anything else this offseason. And the stakes were higher than most people understood at the time. Kelsey Mitchell re-signed with the Fever on a 1-year supermax deal worth $249,244, becoming the first player in franchise history to sign a contract of that magnitude under the new CBA. She signed it right alongside A'ja Wilson as one of the first supermax deals handed out league-wide. Without this one, the rest of the offseason looks completely different. Mitchell is the engine that makes the Clark backcourt function. Lose her and Indiana isn't just losing a scorer. They're dismantling the entire offensive architecture that made them dangerous in 2025. But the money hits differently when you understand what came before it. Mitchell stayed through a 5-win season in 2022, stayed when the roster around her was genuinely painful to watch, stayed through 4 head coaches in her first 7 years with the organization. 4. That level of instability breaks most players. Mitchell absorbed every bit of it and kept showing up. She could have pushed for a trade and nobody in the league would have blamed her. Other players have demanded exits for far less. Instead, she chose loyalty, and nearly a decade of it is exactly why she's now the highest paid player in Fever franchise history. That's not sentiment, that's justice. And it set the tone for everything that followed this offseason. The Supermax number gets the headlines, but the structure of the deal is where Indiana's real strategy lives. Mitchell came into this offseason as a first-team All-WNBA selection, 5th in MVP voting, an All-Star, and averaging 20.2 points per game on an expiring contract. A player at that level attracts serious attention from around the league fast. The Fever knew exactly what they were sitting on and moved accordingly. Indiana used the core designation under the new CBA to lock in exclusive negotiating rights before any other franchise could make a run at her. That designation gave Indiana control of the conversation, and Mitchell chose to stay rather than find out what the open market would have paid. The 1-year structure is deliberate and worth paying close attention to. Clark and Boston both become max eligible under the EPIC provision, and keeping Mitchell on a single-year deal preserves the cap flexibility Indiana needs when those conversations arrive. Mitchell betting on herself for 1 year while going all in on a championship run tells you everything about where her priorities sit. That's a player who wants a ring more than long-term security somewhere else. And the basketball itself makes the contract look like a bargain. When Mitchell attacks downhill and draws defensive collapses, Clark gets open looks from 3. When defenses chase Clark off screens, Mitchell has a runway straight to the basket. They don't just complement each other, they actively make each other harder to guard. That's a backcourt defenses genuinely cannot solve. Indiana's 2025 season showed real flashes of offensive potential, but one position kept exposing the gap between promising and genuinely dangerous. The forward spot next to Aliyah Boston was consistently the weak link, and the issue wasn't effort, it was compatibility. In a system that asks its front court to sprint every change of possession, defend in space, and finish efficiently without clogging driving lanes, Indiana's power forward role functions closer to a hybrid wing than anything resembling a traditional post. When Clark pushes pace off a rebound or a quick outlet, the first big down the floor determines whether Indiana gets early offense or settles into half-court creation. Too often, last season, that first big arrived late or occupied the wrong space. That split-second delay is the difference between a clean layup and a set defense waiting to suffocate the possession. Billings is built for exactly that demand profile. She's a high-mobility forward who thrives as a rim runner, finishes through contact, and doesn't need post touches to stay productive. Her value in transition comes from spacing vertically rather than horizontally, forcing defenders to respect her sprinting lanes, which opens driving angles for Clark and kick-out sequences for Mitchell. Defensively, she switches, helps at the rim, and recovers without fouling in exactly the coverage schemes Boston's drop positioning creates. She's also been in similar read and react systems before, which means the learning curve shrinks dramatically. The fewer first-year mistakes a lineup has to survive, the faster it becomes dangerous in fourth-quarter playoff minutes. Most free agency signings come through the standard corporate pipeline: official announcement, team graphic, coordinated social media rollout. Tasha Harris didn't get any of that. Her signing leaked in the most entertainingly accidental way imaginable. Fever GM Amber Cox and assistant coach Austin Kelly posted a workout video that included Harris, tagged it with the hashtag feeling feverish, and anyone paying attention to the WNBA free agent market immediately understood exactly what that meant. You don't fly someone in for a workout with the GM watching courtside unless you're serious. And you definitely don't post it publicly with that hashtag if the deal isn't already basically sealed. The announcement came before the announcement, and the internet caught it in real time. But beyond the entertaining leak, Harris solves a problem that genuinely kept Indiana's front office up at night. Sydney Colson tore her ACL last season and won't be available in 2026. The backup guard spot was completely exposed, and what fills it can't just be a clipboard holder waiting for the starters to return. When Clark sits, the offense cannot stall and wait for her to come back. Someone on that bench needs to initiate, run pick and rolls, make quick decisions under pressure, and keep the pace alive. Harris spent time with the Connecticut Sun, one of the most defensively disciplined organizations in the league. She shoots around 40% from three on career numbers. She's only 27, and analysts have compared her profile directly to Mario Chalmers. That's the kind of backup that changes playoff outcomes. The Mario Chalmers comparison isn't just flattering language, it's a specific basketball argument. Chalmers was never the best player on his team, never needed to be, and still found ways to be the reason his team won games nobody expected them to win. Harris operates in that same lane. She decides fast in the pick and roll, hits corner threes off movement, stays attached defensively, and never tries to be the hero when the moment doesn't call for it. That steadiness is worth more than any highlight reel, especially in May and June, when every possession in a playoff game feels like it carries 10 times its regular season weight. Last season, opposing coaches had a simple formula against Indiana: time your runs for the moments Clark sits. The offense would visibly slow, ball movement turned stagnant, possessions devolved into isolation attempts that went nowhere. Smart coaching staffs exploited that window consistently, and it cost the Fever in close games and playoff pressure situations. With Harris running the second unit, White can now stagger Clark and Mitchell's minutes without the offense falling off a cliff. Harris keeps the system moving. She makes the correct simple play every time down the floor without disappearing or forcing the action. She also grew up in the region, which adds a layer of personal investment that no contract clause can manufacture. She's not filling a roster spot, she's coming home to compete for something real. And Indiana's bench suddenly looks like something you'd actually trust when it matters. Not every signing in a championship offseason needs to be a statement. Some of the smartest moves a front office can make are the quiet ones. The decisions that don't generate headlines but fill real gaps without endangering the cap flexibility needed for the moves that actually matter. Damiris Dantas returning to Indiana on the veteran minimum is exactly that kind of signing. This isn't about a starring role or a positional upgrade. Dantas is a veteran who shoots from the perimeter, prepares the right way, and has been around long enough to understand what a genuine championship push looks like from the inside. There are real questions about whether her shooting returns to form after a difficult stretch, and those questions are fair. But at the veteran minimum, the cap risk to Indiana is essentially zero. If she's sharp, she's a useful rotation piece who spaces the floor, steadies the locker room, and gives Stephanie White another option when the game slows down and shooting becomes critical. If she struggles, the Fever haven't compromised anything significant to find out. That's the entire logic of intelligent roster construction at the edges. You save your real financial commitment for the players who genuinely move the needle, and you fill the remaining spots with low-risk, high-character veterans who understand their role and embrace it. 4 signings confirmed on day 1, 4 priorities addressed with speed that clearly caught the rest of the league off guard. But the front office wasn't finished, not even close, and what came next had the potential to change everything. Lexie Hull and Sophie Cunningham are both expected back, but neither return is guaranteed, and the distinction matters. Hull is a restricted free agent, which means Indiana extends a qualifying offer and then monitors whether any outside team makes a serious run at her. If that offer comes, the Fever have to decide quickly whether they match a number that might be bigger than they'd prefer. Her value to this team goes far beyond the stat sheet. She's one of the best 3-and-D wings in the league, shooting 40% from deep over her last 2 seasons, while defending multiple positions with a physicality that genuinely makes opponents uncomfortable. She played through 2 black eyes and repeated elbows to the face last season without missing a single minute. That kind of toughness doesn't get replaced. It gets protected. Cunningham flashed real offensive versatility before injury slowed her in 2025, and her scoring ability alongside Hull's off-ball movement creates wing depth that most rosters in this league simply cannot match. She's also been Clark's most vocal public defender, going on record with a directness that's rare in professional sports. Losing either of them leaves Indiana thin at exactly the position where they need players who can guard and score on the same possession. But the 2 names circling this franchise that could genuinely elevate the ceiling from very good to something the league hasn't seen before are Alanna Smith and Azurá Stevens. And the buzz around both of them carries real weight. Alanna Smith guards multiple positions, shoots from distance, and switches onto guards in pick-and-roll coverage without getting lost or fouled into oblivion. She publicly said she'd be doing herself a disservice if she wasn't exploring opportunities beyond Minnesota. That's not casual off-season noise. That's a player signaling clearly where her head is at. In a playoff series where opposing coaches hunt mismatches relentlessly, Smith is the piece that eliminates the most dangerous ones before they develop. Then there's Azurá Stevens, and this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable for the rest of the league. She's 6'6", scores in the post, and shot 38% from 3 on 4.4 attempts per game, while averaging 12.8 points and 8 rebounds with the LA Sparks in 2025. The detail that makes her a perfect fit for Indiana specifically is that she produced all of that without being anyone's first, second, or third option. In a system where Clark and Mitchell already generate the majority of the offense, Stevens becomes a nightmare to scheme against because she doesn't need plays called for her to impact the game. She went further than just expressing interest. She posted a photo of herself in a Fever jersey on social media. In WNBA free agency, that's not a casual moment. That's a declaration. Picture the full roster with both Smith and Stevens signed. Clark and Mitchell in the backcourt, Boston anchoring the interior, Stevens and Smith flanking her, Harris running the bench unit, Hull and Cunningham at the wings. That's not a contender. That's a problem. Indiana has gone from a franchise players quietly tolerated to a destination they're actively calling. But responses don't win championships. Execution does. The regular season doesn't reward potential. It exposes every crack under pressure. Every signing made this offseason, every gamble taken, every needle threaded through a tight cap will eventually answer to one standard. What happens when the stakes are real? The margin is razor thin, and belief alone isn't enough to close a game. Clark drew the line publicly: championship or nothing. The front office answered with urgency that shifted the entire tone of the league. But urgency builds rosters. It doesn't win rings. What wins rings is chemistry holding under fatigue, depth surviving injury, and execution not flinching when everything gets heavy. Indiana is no longer waiting, no longer asking. The roster is assembled. The window is open. Now comes the only part that actually matters. Stay locked with my channel, Hoops Reports. We'll see you again